He rescued a frail alien widow. She turned out to be an ancient pleasure deity in disguise. Asterisk, the wind howled across the frozen land. Thick clouds moved slowly in the gray sky. Snow fell in soft flakes, covering everything in silence. John moved through the icy ruins, his boots crunching with every step. He wore a long coat and thick gloves, his face half covered by a thermal mask. He was a salvager, a human who lived alone on this abandoned planet. Every day, he searched the ruins for lost tech, old supplies, or anything of value. But today, something felt different. His scanner beeped softly in his hand. It showed a small heat signature, far off from the ruins. John paused, frowning. "No animals here," he muttered, "and no humans besides me." Still, the signal was there, flickering like a weak flame. He hesitated for a moment, then started walking toward it. The snow got deeper and the wind colder. John pulled his coat tighter. He had seen strange things before: old warbots, ghost signals, even empty alien ships. But he had never found a heat signal like this. All alone in the ice, after 15 minutes of walking, he saw something, a shape in the snow. Small and still, he moved closer, hand on his sidearm, just in case. Then he stopped. It was a person. No, not a person, an alien. She sat hunched over, back against a rock. Her body was thin and fragile, covered in torn gray robes. Her skin was pale blue, her long silver hair tangled and frozen. She looked like an old woman, near death. John lowered his weapon. He had seen aliens before, but not one like her. Her eyes opened slightly when he stepped closer. They glowed softly, like stars fading in the night. "Help," she whispered, her voice weak like the wind. Then she passed out. John looked around, unsure. This could be a trap, maybe a bandit trick, but something in her voice felt real, painful, tired, full of something ancient. He knelt beside her and touched her arm. She was cold, too cold, but she was alive. "Barely," he sighed. "Damn it," he said quietly. Then he lifted her carefully in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, almost weightless. Her body felt warm now, strangely warm, like it carried a secret heat, but her face remained still. Eyes closed, John carried her back to his crawler, a heavy vehicle built for the frozen wastelands. He placed her in the back seat and turned on the heat. The crawler hummed to life and began the slow ride back to his shelter. During the ride, he kept glancing at her. She didn't move, didn't speak. But her breathing was steady now. Each breath left a little cloud on the crawler's window. When they arrived at his shelter, he carried her inside. The place was simple: one main room, with tools, a kitchen corner, and a cot. He laid her on the cot and covered her with thick blankets. He checked her pulse again, still slow but steady. He sat beside her, watching. "Who are you?" he whispered. She didn't answer, but her lips moved slightly. A tear slid from the corner of her eye, shining like crystal. John stared at it, confused. He had helped many survivors in the past, but none had cried like this. Not in sleep, not in silence. Then he noticed something, a small glow from under her sleeve. He pulled it back gently and saw a strange mark on her arm. It was a symbol, glowing faintly in gold light. It didn't look like a tattoo, it looked alive. The symbol pulsed once. John pulled his hand back, his heart racing. "What the hell?" he whispered. He didn't understand it yet, but something was wrong. Something about this woman didn't match what he saw. She looked old, weak, lost. But that mark on her arm felt powerful, ancient, like it didn't belong to a dying widow, but to something far greater. John stood up, trying to calm himself. He locked the doors just in case. Then he sat down across the room and watched her from a distance. The mark on her arm slowly faded, hidden again under her robe. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, the alien woman slept quietly, but her fingers twitched now and then, as if dreaming of something far beyond this world. And in the shadows, her eyes opened slightly. Just for a second, they glowed brighter, deeper, like twin stars awakening. Then they closed again. John didn't see it, but something had begun, something far from normal. And far from safe. The next morning, John woke up early. He rubbed his eyes and looked across the room. The alien woman was still lying on the cot. Her breathing was slow but steady. John stood up and walked over. Her skin was no longer ice cold. Her cheeks had a faint color now, not so pale. It looked like she was healing. He went to the kitchen corner and made a hot drink, something like tea, strong and bitter, as he sipped it. He heard movement behind him. He turned. The woman was sitting up, weak but awake. She was watching him, eyes glowing soft gold. "You saved me," she said, its voice quiet but clear. John nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess I did. Why?" she asked, tilting her head. He shrugged. Seemed like the right thing to do. She blinked slowly, then looked around the room. Her gaze stopped at the window, where the snowstorm raged outside. "This world is still cold," she said softly. "Has been for years," John replied. "No one lives here now, except me." She didn't answer right away. Then she looked down at her hands, pale and trembling. "Time moves differently for me," she whispered. John frowned. "What do you mean?" "I've been alive a very long time," she said. "I've seen stars born and die, cities rise and fall." John chuckled, thinking she was being poetic. "That's so," he said with a smile. "You don't look that old." She gave a faint smile, almost sad. "Looks lie." She said, "Names lie too." John replied, "What should I call you?" She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Call me Vela." "All right, Vela," he said. "I'm John." They sat in silence for a while. The storm outside beat hard against the shelter. Inside, the warmth hummed gently. Vela finally asked, "What do you do here, all alone?" "I salvage tech," John replied. "Old ruins, broken machines, dead satellites, no family." He shook his head. "Not anymore." Her eyes softened. "We have both lost something then," she said. John looked at her carefully. "You said something yesterday. Don't let them take me." "Who's them?" Vela's face darkened. She looked away, toward the fire unit on the wall. "They hunt me still," she said, "even across dead planets and empty stars." "Who?" John asked again, this time more serious. "Hunters," she said. "Slavers. Priests, kings, call them what you will. I escaped long ago, but power always leaves a mark." Her hand touched the sleeve, hiding the golden sigil. John remembered the light from the night before. "You don't look dangerous," he said. Vela gave a short laugh. "Not cruel, just tired. I was a queen once, worshipped like a goddess," she said. "But worship turns to fear, and fear becomes chains." John sat back, trying to process her words. He had heard stories about ancient beings, especially from deep space, but he never believed them. Still, something in her voice felt real. Too real to be just a story. "You think they'll come here?" he asked. She looked him in the eyes. "If they find me, they will kill you first." John stayed quiet, his jaw tight. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the snow had slowed, but the wind still roared. He felt the weight of her words settle on his shoulders. He wasn't a hero, just a man trying to survive. But now, he had taken in something much bigger than himself. Behind him, Vela rose from the cot, slowly, carefully. She stepped toward him with bare feet on cold metal. When she stood beside him, she looked at the storm too. "I didn't want you in this," she said, "but you gave me warmth, and that binds us now." John turned to her. Her face was no longer just tired, was graceful, sharp, almost regal. Her presence filled the room like she was more than just flesh and blood. "Are you really a goddess?" He asked quietly. Vela did not answer. Instead, she raised her hand and placed 2 fingers on his forehead. A wave of warmth passed through his body. His eyes widened. For a moment, he saw stars, galaxies, ancient temples, wars fought in golden skies. He gasped and stepped back. What was that? He asked, breathing hard. A glimpse, she said softly. Of what I once was. John stared at her, heart pounding. She was not what she seemed. Not just a frail alien widow. Something powerful, buried beneath the quiet voice and weak frame. Vela sat back down, tired again. That is enough for now, she said. I need rest. John nodded slowly. Mind spinning. He walked away and sat at his desk, trying to understand. Outside, the storm faded. Inside, 2 lives were changing. One slowly waking up from an ancient sleep. The other realizing he may have saved a being beyond his understanding and far away, deep in space. A dark ship turned toward a cold planet. Its scanners had picked up a forgotten signal, a golden light barely seen, but enough to bring the hunters. John kept the fire unit running all night, even though the storm outside had faded. The air still carried a chill inside the shelter. The silence was thicker than usual. He didn't sleep. He sat at his desk, watching the soft orange light flicker across the walls. Behind him, Vela lay on the cot with her eyes closed. But somehow, he knew she wasn't sleeping. He had seen things, flashes of strange worlds. Memories that weren't his. He didn't know what they meant, but they were real. Too real to be imagination. He glanced at her again. She hadn't moved in hours, but her breathing was steady, slow, controlled, not like someone resting, more like someone listening. At midnight, he stood and walked to the storage cabinet. He pulled out a folded blanket and another pillow. He turned to offer it to her, just in case she needed more warmth. But she was sitting up, eyes open, looking directly at him. Thank you, she said softly. Before he could even speak, John froze, surprised. You don't sleep? He asked, handing her the blanket anyway. Not in the way you do, she replied. I watch, I remember. I listen. To what? To time, she said. As if it were a normal answer, John sat down again, this time closer to her. Are you scared they'll find you? He asked. Her eyes narrowed, the glow in them pulsing gently. No, she said, but I'm tired of running. There was silence again, heavy like snow falling on stone. Then she asked, Do you have music? John raised an eyebrow, surprised by the question. I've got a few old Earth songs, pre-war stuff, he said. Walking to the console, he pressed a button, and soft acoustic guitar filled the room. The tune was slow, calming, almost like a lullaby. Vela closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. I remember this kind of sound, she whispered. Simple, beautiful. John leaned back in his chair, watching her, even now. Sitting wrapped in a blanket with tangled silver hair, she didn't look ordinary. She looked like someone who had lived through centuries and buried too many names. After a while, she opened her eyes again. Her gaze drifted to a small crack in the shelter wall. I feel them, she said. Faint but moving closer, John stood up sharply. Already. She nodded slowly. They have long memories. How many? Too many for you, she said, her voice gentle but honest. John felt anger rise in his chest. I saved you, he said. I brought you here. I deserve to know the danger, Vela. Looked at him, sadness in her eyes. You gave me kindness, she said, but you did not ask for truth. Now it's here, and it is not kind. John turned away, pacing. He had survived scavengers, mercenaries, even a pirate ambush once. But this felt bigger, heavier. He wasn't ready not for this. I should have left you out there, he muttered. You still can. She said calmly. John stopped walking, turned to face her. You'd die. She tilted her head. or become something else? That answer didn't help. He sat down. Again, rubbing his hands over his face. "You talk like a prophet," he said. "But I still don't know what you are. I'm not sure anymore either." She replied. She stood now, slowly, gracefully. Her movements were smoother. No longer frail, like her body was remembering its true form. She walked to the center of the room and looked up at the metal ceiling. "This place is safer now," she said, "but it won't be for long." John stood too. "Then we run." Vela shook her head. "They don't chase the body," she said. "They chase the soul. Then what do we do?" She turned to him, her eyes glowing brighter than before. "There is one way," she said, "but it will cost you something." John narrowed his eyes. "What?" She stepped closer, standing only inches away now. Her presence was warm, magnetic. "I can mark you," she said, "as mine." His heart skipped a beat. "What does that mean?" "They won't touch you if you carry my mark," she said. "But it binds us." John felt the weight in those words. "You're serious?" "Yes," she said, "but I will not force it." They stood in silence, the soft music still playing in the background. Outside, the winds had stopped completely. It was too quiet now, unnaturally quiet. John looked into her eyes. He saw stars. Again, deep and endless. He didn't understand her fully, but he knew this was real. Finally, he nodded once. "Then mark me," he said. Vela's expression softened. She raised her hand, touched his chest with 2 fingers. A golden light bloomed across his skin. It didn't burn, it hummed, like a living symbol etched into his soul. He gasped, but didn't pull away. When she stepped back, the mark remained, shining faintly. John felt different. Like a barrier had broken, like part of him now belonged to something older. Deeper, Vela sat down again. "You should rest now," she said. "They are near, but not here." Yet John nodded, tired but awake. He sat near the fire, staring at the soft light. The shelter felt warmer now, but also more dangerous. Something was coming. But something ancient had also awakened. John finally closed his eyes near the heater. He didn't plan to sleep, but exhaustion took him fast. Too much had changed in just 2 days. Too many questions, too few answers. The moment his body relaxed, the dreams began, but they weren't his dreams. They felt borrowed. He stood in a city made of glass and silver. Tall towers shimmered under 2 suns. The sky was filled with music, not sound, but color. People with glowing skin walked beneath floating lights, and in the center of it all stood her Vela. But not weak, not tired. Here she was tall, radiant, dressed in silk and energy. Crowds bowed before her as she raised her hands, not in command, but in blessing. Then, suddenly, darkness fell. The suns vanished. The sky cracked, ships appeared. Overhead, black, sharp, cruel. Explosions ripped the glass towers apart. People screamed, scattered, vanished in waves of red fire. Vela screamed too, not in fear, but in fury. Her hands burst with golden light. Wings of flame unfolded from her back, but she was pulled down by chains, thousands of them, wrapped in iron that glowed with symbols from a forgotten tongue. John jolted awake, sweating. The heater still hummed softly, but the room felt colder now. He looked around. Vela wasn't on the cot. He stood quickly and moved toward the exit just before he opened the door. He felt warmth behind him. She stood there, silent. Wrapped in a long robe, her eyes were calm, but deep. "You saw it," she said, not asking. But knowing, John nodded. "What was that place?" "My home," she whispered, before it was taken. He stepped back, still catching his breath. That dream, it wasn't a memory. It was like I was there. "You were," she said softly. Through me, John stared at her. "That?" Mark, you gave Mitz not just protection. No, she said. It's a connection. He sat down, his legs weak. Why me? Vela looked at him for a long time. You were kind, she said. Without reason, that's rare. John couldn't argue with that. He had been alone so long he had stopped asking why he helped anyone. He just did. Maybe because it made him feel less lost. She moved closer and sat across from him. Her voice dropped to a whisper. There are things in me that are still locked. Powers that I sealed away myself, but now, with you near, they stir. John frowned. That doesn't sound safe. It isn't, she said, for either of us. He felt it again, the warmth under his skin, that mark on his chest pulsing softly. Not pain, not fear, something else, like a question. Waiting to be answered, Vela placed a hand over her heart. I was worshipped for centuries, she said, but not loved. When I lost everything, I ran. I disguised myself as something they would ignore. A widow, John said. Understanding, yes. She whispered, a forgotten, broken soul. But now, she added, your presence feeds the flame. John laughed dryly. I'm just a salvager. You are more, she said. Even if you don't see it yet. Silence hung again. Thick, but not uncomfortable. Then she stood and walked to the door. Come, she said. I want to show you something. John followed her outside into the cold night. The snow had stopped completely, and the sky was clear. Above them, stars glittered like dust on black velvet. Vela raised her hand, and a ripple of golden light spread from her palm in the air. Glowing shapes formed maps, symbols, a constellation of movement. What is this? John asked. The path they travel, she said, pointing to a red dot. They are closer now. John stared at the shapes, realizing they moved slowly. Can we escape? He asked. Vela didn't answer. Instead, she closed her hand and the images vanished. I must remember who I am, she said quietly. If I don't, we both die. John looked at her. Even now, under the stars, her hair flowing in the wind. She didn't look like a goddess. She looked like someone trying to be human. What can I do? He asked. Stay near, she said, and at the time. Combs. Don't run. He nodded slowly, unsure but willing, not because he understood everything, but because something inside told him she was worth the risk. As they returned to the shelter, a low hum echoed in the distance. Faint, like a whisper through space. Vela stopped walking and looked toward the sky. They've entered orbit, she said. John felt the mark on his chest pulse again. Faster this time, hotter. The hunt had begun. But so had something else. Something waking inside both of them. Something not even Vela could fully control. The next morning came without sunlight. The clouds had returned, thick and heavy. The sky looked like it had forgotten how to shine. John stood by the window, staring into the dull white fog. Vela was still sitting cross-legged on the floor. She hadn't moved all night. Her eyes had remained closed. But something about her had changed. Her skin no longer looked fragile. Her posture was stronger, her presence heavier. Like the energy around her had thickened. John turned away from the window. You haven't eaten, he said. I do not need food like you, she replied. Eyes still shut, he raised an eyebrow. So you were never really sick? Vela opened her eyes slowly. They shimmered gold and violet. I was weakened, she said. But never dying. John crossed his arms, watching her. Then that whole act, the frail widow in the snow. That was all fake. No, she said, her voice calm. It was real, but it was also a choice. She stood now, and her full height seemed taller than before. Her silver hair floated slightly, moved by some invisible wind. The blanket she once wore slipped off her shoulders and underneath. Her robe now glowed faintly with runes across the fabric. I hid my power, she continued. Not just from them, but from myself, because power draws attention, and attention brings war. John took a step back, not in fear, but in awe. You don't look sick anymore, he said quietly. Vela gave a soft smile. That's because I remember now. She walked toward the center of the room, each step silent. The golden mark on John's chest pulsed again. He touched it through his shirt, feeling the heat rise. You awakened part of me, she said. But now, I must awaken the rest. John frowned. Won't that also alert them faster? Vela nodded. Yes, it will. But if I remain like this, they will destroy this shelter like it's nothing. I must meet them as I once was. John looked down. You really think they're coming soon? They're already here. She whispered, waiting in orbit, measuring, watching, waiting for weakness. A low hum vibrated through the walls. Just then, John felt it in his bones, like a silent earthquake. He looked at the ceiling. What was that? They're scanning us, Vela said. Their machines can see through stone and metal. John ran to his weapons locker, pulling out a plasma rifle and an old pulse grenade. They'll have more than scanners, he said. Vela didn't move. You think you can stop them with that? She asked gently. I don't plan on winning, he replied, just slowing them down. Vela walked over to him and placed her hand over the barrel of the rifle. Instantly, the metal bent and melted like wax. John pulled his hand back in shock. What the hell? You don't need weapons, she said. You have me? He looked into her eyes and saw no fear, no hesitation, no doubt. Only fire, pure, ancient fire. But what if they kill you again? He asked. They didn't kill me, she said. They caged me. They used lies, pain, and time. But I am done hiding. She raised both hands now, and the air inside the room shimmered. The walls lit up with glowing shape circles within circles. Symbols older than Earth's memory. A floating shield formed around the shelter. Invisible from the outside, but powerful. John stepped back, watching the magic unfold. I didn't know you could do all this. You saw me when I could not see myself, she said. That has power too, suddenly. The lights in the room flickered. The hum from above grew louder. John grabbed the pulse grenade and looked at her. You sure your shield will hold? She walked to the door and opened it. A gust of cold wind blew in, but she didn't flinch. Her robe snapped in the wind, glowing brighter. It won't need to hold, she said. Because I'm going out to meet them. John's eyes widened. You're walking into their hands. No, she said, stepping outside. I'm walking into my own truth. He followed her to the edge of the hill, where the land stretched flat and silent. Above them, something massive moved through the clouds, a shadow long and wide, like a beast sleeping in the sky. John squinted. That's their ship. One of many, she replied. Then, for the first time, John heard its voices, not with his ears, but inside his head. She is awake, the voices said. She remembers. She must not be allowed to rise again. John stumbled backward. Covering his ears, even though it did nothing, Vela didn't move. She looked up, raised both arms, and whispered a word that had no sound. A beam of golden light shot up from her body. It cut through the clouds like a spear, touching the dark shape in the sky. John's vision blurred. The ship above trembled, not from damage, but from fear. For the first time in centuries, the goddess had returned to the battlefield, and she was no longer pretending to be weak. The light faded, the clouds broke apart, like torn cloth, and the sky, for the first time in years, turned gold, not from the sun, but from her. Vela stood still on the frozen hill. Her arms lowered now, but the power around her pulsed through the air like a living heartbeat. John watched her, stunned. Not a word came from his mouth. He had seen war, wreckage, suffering, but this was something different. It wasn't destruction. It was presence, The great ship in the sky, massive, black, ancient, remained in place, but its hum had changed. It no longer searched, no longer hunted. Now, it hesitated. John took a slow step forward. What? What did you just do? Vela turned to him, her eyes still glowing like a sunrise. I reminded them, she said. Reminded them of what? Of who I am. She walked past him, her bare feet leaving no prints in the snow. Each step seemed lighter, like she floated an inch above the ground. I was once a protector of life, she said, before they turned my worship into chains. They fed on the devotion of the weak, twisted my temples into prisons. John followed beside her, holding tight to the grenade still clipped to his belt. It felt useless now, but it gave him something to hold. Something solid in this sea of the unknown. They feared my pleasure, she continued. Because it freed minds, they hated my touch, because it brought peace, and peace to tyrants is the end of control. John couldn't stop himself. But if you were so powerful, how did they stop you? Vela paused, and her glow dimmed slightly. They didn't fight me, she said. They loved me. John blinked, confused. What do you mean? They didn't win by force, she said. They won by slowly twisting love into obedience, turning my joy into worship, then my worship into fear. She placed her hand over her chest, and once I feared myself. I lost everything. John looked up at the sky again. The ship was slowly moving, now circling above, like a beast deciding if it should strike. They don't look scared, he said. They're calculating, she replied, trying to understand. If I'm still weak enough to capture, John turned to her. And are you? Vela smiled, not warmly, but like a storm on the edge of breaking. No, she said, not anymore. Suddenly, a flash burst from the ship. A dart of black metal came screaming toward the surface. John pulled Vela to the side as the spike slammed into the snow just meters away. Smoke rose, snow hissed, and then the pod opened. From inside, they emerged tall, armored beings with bone-white skin and glowing helmets. They moved like shadows. Fast and silent, John raised his weapon out of instinct. Vela simply stepped forward. There were 5 of them. Each one carried a spear-like weapon pulsing with blue light. But they didn't attack. They knelt. John's jaw dropped. What the hell? Vela stood calmly before them. One of the warriors spoke in a language that sounded like wind and metal. Vela replied in the same tongue, her voice steady, unshaken. John didn't understand a word, but he could feel the shift. Power was changing. Hands, or returning to its rightful place after a long silence. One of the warriors stood and removed his helmet. His face was scarred, eyes dull with age and experience. You live, he said, in broken human tongue, long hidden, long mourned. Vela nodded once. I forgive nothing, she said, but I understand everything. The warrior looked at her, then at John. He gave a small bow. Then we are no longer your jailers. He said, we are your messengers, Vela. Looked up toward the sky. Tell them, she said. Tell all of them, I have returned. The warrior nodded and turned away. He and his team stepped back into the pod as quickly as they came. They vanished into the sky. John stood beside her in silence. What just happened? The old empire broke, she said. The ones who ruled it have aged, faded, but remnants remain. They thought I was gone forever, she continued, but even gods sleep lightly. The sky had turned quiet again. The golden glow around her faded slowly. Vela staggered slightly, catching herself. John reached out and grabbed her arm, steadying her. You all right? She nodded weakly. Using that much power takes more than strength, than rest, John said, guiding her back to the shelter. You've earned it. Back inside. The fire flickered once more. Vela lay on the cot again. This time, not as a frail woman, but as a being trying to remember how to be human. John sat beside her, not speaking, just watching. The mark on his chest glowed softly again, not with heat, but with connection. Outside, the last cloud faded from the sky, and for a brief moment, sunlight touched the frozen land, as if the world itself had paused to witness the return of something divine. The fire crackled softly in the shelter. John sat on the edge of his cot, elbows resting on his knees. Vela lay across from him, her glow dimmed but steady. Outside, silence had fallen across the frozen land like a blanket. No more ships hovered. In the clouds, no more shadows scanned the sky. The enemy had retreated, not defeated by force, but by recognition, for the first time since he met her. The room felt safe, but strangely heavier, like the end of something had arrived, and the beginning of something neither of them understood. "You okay?" John asked quietly. Vela opened her eyes slowly. "I am tired," she said, "but not broken. I haven't felt that way in centuries." John gave a small nod. He didn't pretend to understand her world, her pain, or her past, but he knew what she meant. Sometimes being tired wasn't about sleep. It was about carrying too much for too long. Vela sat up slowly, brushing her silver hair from her face. "The mark on your chest," she said. "It will fade soon." John looked down, already noticing the golden glow dimming beneath his shirt. "What happens when it's gone?" he asked. She paused before answering. "You'll return to what you were," she said, "a man." Untouched by the divine, John raised an eyebrow. "After all this, you expect me to just go back to salvaging scrap in the snow?" Vela gave him a soft smile. "No," she said. "I expect you to choose." He stood and walked to the window, staring out at the now clear horizon. "Choose what?" "Whether to remain," she said, "or to follow." John turned back to her slowly. "Follow where?" Vela stood too, this time with strength in her step. "To the stars," she said, "to where I was born and to what I must rebuild." "I'm not a god," John said. "I'm just me." "You were never just anything," she replied. "Even the smallest kindness echoes across time." He watched her quietly. The fire behind her seemed to bend toward her presence, like the flames recognized her soul. He thought of the first time he saw her shivering in the snow. Looking like she had nothing left, he had almost walked away. Almost. Now, here she stood, divine, powerful, reborn, and yet still her, still the same voice that had whispered, "Don't let them take me." John ran a hand through his hair and laughed softly. "You're asking a lot." "I am," she said, "because I am offering more." The door to the shelter opened on its own. A warm breeze entered, a breeze that shouldn't exist on this planet. Outside, something shimmered in the distance, a structure forming slowly in the snow, glass and gold, humming with energy. "What is that?" "My temple," she said, "or what's left of it. It's calling me to return." John looked at her, his voice quieter now. "What happens if I go with you?" "You'll stop aging," she said. "You'll gain sight beyond human limits, but you will no longer belong to Earth." He considered that eternity, power, wonder, but also loneliness, uncertainty, and the end of the quiet, simple life he had built from scrap and sorrow. He turned to face her again. "You sure I'm the one you want by your side?" Vela stepped forward and placed a hand on his heart. "I don't want a servant," she said. "I want someone who chose me even when I was nothing." John looked into her eyes, not glowing now, but open, real. He smiled. "Then I guess you're stuck with me." She smiled too, and in that smile, the stars seemed to breathe. Outside, the snow melted in a perfect circle around the forming temple. Light rose from the ice in long spirals, and in the center of it all, a bridge of golden energy reached toward the sky. John and Vela walked toward it together. Side by side, the wind no longer stung. The world no longer felt dead. And the sky opened like a book, waiting to be read. As they stepped into the light, John glanced back once, at the shelter, at the place where everything changed. Then he looked ahead and didn't look back again. They rose into the stars, not as man and goddess, but as something new. A pair rewritten by fate, sealed by kindness, and unbound by time.